Hello, my name is Jonathan Downie and I'm a consultant in paediatric palliative medicine at the Royal Hospital for Children in Glasgow. And I want to talk about the importance of establishing relationships and communicating with families and children who are experiencing serious illness. I think that communication is one of the, if not the most important intervention we have as palliative care providers. Our ability to come alongside a family, to get to know them, and to bear witness to the suffering that they may be experiencing as a result of a child's diagnosis offers us a really unique and very privileged insight into the inner workings of that family, what is central and most important to them, and ultimately can facilitate our ability as healthcare professionals to guide them to the best set of interventions to maximise their child's quality of life and also quality of health. I think communication is central to every part of a child's journey, and that starts at the point of receiving a diagnosis. I think one of the barriers that we often hear is that because families are naturally upset or are naturally distressed by receiving information around about a prognosis, that in some way we want to protect them from that. But what we know very clearly from research and what we know from families and children and young people themselves is that compassionate honesty is incredibly important. So whilst information may be distressing and difficult to hear, the ability of professionals to speak honestly, clearly about what a diagnosis means, both for now and for the future, is empowering for them. And I guess that leads me on to talk about the next paradigm of communication, and that is really around about how we establish goals of care with a family. And simply what that means is our ability to come alongside them, to get to know what is important to them as a family, not about the child's underlying diagnosis, but actually what is central, what brings that child joy, what this family are hoping for, what are they worried about, what keeps them awake at night, where do they get their strength from, and how well is that working for them at any given moment. And in establishing and asking those questions, we reach a much deeper insight into that family and what is important to them. And it's therefore then our job as professionals to help them guide the landscape that is often incredibly complex when you're dealing with a child with medical complexity or a serious illness. I think one of the other barriers that we often hear is a desire to remain hopeful, and that perhaps palliative care, its introduction, or its very presence serves to remove or diminish that hope. And I think that's a barrier that we now can very strongly advocate is in fact not true. I see my role as a palliative care consultant as very much illuminating hope. I think hope is something that we fundamentally do as human beings. And we talk about this concept so much, particularly in clinical medicine, that we almost think that we all understand what we're talking about. And I think that really comes down to three things: that we think hope for families is really about life extension, a miracle, or a cure. And when that is not possible, we worry that by asking a family what they're hoping for only serves to cause them more suffering or distress, and so therefore we avoid those conversations. Where in fact, I think what we see from families is where life extension, cure, or a miracle might not be what we're going to get or what is able to be achieved, that actually they can find hope and meaning in all sorts of areas of life. And so our role, therefore, is to be able to illuminate those hopes. I think some of the language that can be particularly helpful around those conversations is using language around about wishing, worrying, and wondering. So wishing or hoping is our ability to align ourselves with that family's goal. So I share your hope. I would love nothing more for a miracle to happen and for your child to be cured. I would love nothing more for your child to have as long and healthy a life as possible. But I worry, in light of all that I know about your child's condition, or the fact that they are not responding to the very best therapies that we have available, that time might be short, and that we might ultimately not get the goal that we are hoping for if that goal is life extension. And I wonder, my ability to make a recommendation, I wonder what might be important to you in this time, recognising that families can have things that are important and bringing meaning to them at every point in a child's illness. And I think in doing that, however naturally distressing and difficult that can be, we can really bring families along with us. You know, I think in healthcare, often when we as providers are uncomfortable, the tendency is for us to talk more and to share more information. And actually, in doing that, we perhaps don't respond or don't pick up on the cues of a family. And so let's spend a few moments thinking about the power that comes from being silent. And I think this is particularly helpful when we are sharing information with a family that might naturally be difficult and they are expressing emotion, whether that be sadness, grief, anger. And I think it can be incredibly helpful to allow families to have those emotions and to share them, not to feel a need to immediately try to say something to either improve the situation or to move the conversation on, but to acknowledge that emotion and to sit in that space. Sometimes that can feel a little bit uncomfortable for us, but I think that's one of the things that we have to learn to be, is to be comfortable being comfortable in uncomfortable spaces. Yeah. And I think finally, one of the most powerful things that we have as palliative care physicians and healthcare professionals is just our ability to come alongside and sit with families. You know, I'm often struck when I speak to families that the things that are most powerful for them is the people who just sit with them in difficult times. And I think that comes down to really our ability to see each other as humans and recognise that actually our presence, our ability to listen, our ability to hold each other in life's most difficult moments, even if we can't change the inevitable outcome, provides real meaning and power. Thank you.